That video is still nice. Introducing the Inside Carolina, sort of a special podcast. Jason Staples sitting there. I'm Tommy Ashley. We're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. And of course, the big new sponsor for these football shows is Big Game USA, the Jordan Fly Elite Ball.
I see it right.
You think you know North Carolina? It's not just the Smoky Mountains and the Old Well. This is Kenan Stadium, where the Jordan Fly Elite game ball makes its debut and its homecoming. Born to fly, built for Carolina, snag your Carolina blue today.
You made me laugh because you said, I see it right there and I cut you off. But you're right. I got it right here in my hands. And you too can have it in your hands. Unless you're going to play Carolina football, you can order it. Check out the link in the description. Check out the link in the little card on the video at the end of the show. But yeah, definitely a sweet football. If you're a Carolina fan, you want a piece of the action, trying to buy game used jerseys and all that kind of stuff, you can get the ball they're going to use. Jason, it's basically a football, but it's a sweet football. How far could you throw this? Serious question. At your age right now, what have you got in you? How
much of a warm up am I getting on this?
We're walking outside right now.
Walking in first throw.
I'm tearing a rotator cuff. Now I'm throwing it 35 yards.
I'm going to be sore. I can tell you that, but I'll probably give you 45 or 50.
We're going to have to do it one day. Yeah. Bill Belichick, if you're listening, we're going to an open practice and we're going to have a media day boot camp.
That elbow and that shoulder, I can tell you, I'm going to be sore afterwards. But I think I could probably get right around 50. But that would be straining it.
We'll have to see. The old rotator cuff injury from when I was 12 in Little League, probably.
Now, in fairness, I'm saying that with this big game football, because I will tell you, you've thrown this now. You know that I'm telling the truth. That ball will spin on that. You can spin that ball differently than you can a lot of balls out. Like you go and get one off the rack in the store or whatever, and I might get you 45, but that ball I can throw a little bit further because you can spin those balls a little bit better.
Yeah, there's no ducks allowed with this type of football, and you can get it. So where are you when you throw a ball? This is me. I'm a finger up here, and then I'm like that.
And it's pretty similar to mine, but I have both of my my top fingers above the stripe.
Oh,
right out, like my middle finger is basically right on the stripe.
You're up there.
So not quite that high. My middle finger, yeah, it's about like that's basically where I'm at right there.
Yeah. I've always liked to get my middle finger right there on that top seam.
For me, I like it to come off the top two fingers, sort of like you're shooting a basketball off those same two fingers.
Yeah,
I feel it come off those fingers a little better, so I spin it a little better if I've got that middle finger. Basically, it's about on the stripe. I'd have to actually take a look at where it is. It's just a natural feel for me.
Yeah.
But it's the top lace goes just above my ring finger, and that's my normal position. But with that kind of ball, you see guys in college and pros now, they don't always even use the laces anymore.
I know. That's wild to me too. They just rip it, get it, and go.
Right. One of the reasons for that is that the footballs are made so well now, and they're so consistent, and the stitching and everything is so tight that you don't actually need to grip the laces as much as you used to. And it's just the quality of the football is so much higher, exactly like the one you're holding. And I found that with my quarterbacks when I moved to that ball with them, they could spin it a little better. So just tossing that out there.
Yeah, and you got Carolina blue laces, man. Get your big game football on the link in the description and on the Inside Carolina message boards if you're on there. Inside Carolina sponsors, or Big Game USA sponsors of this. Now I can throw the heck out of that one. I can probably throw that one 150 yards. No, let me put it right here. Let's get to why we're here. You know what I can throw? Like those middle school footballs. Man, if we could play college football with that,
well,
I could chunk it.
That's a good example of why they measure hand size at the combine.
There you go. Right? People ask all the time, why is that important?
Why does that matter? Well, go throw a regulation ball and then go and pick up a middle school ball and see which one you can throw further and spin better. You're going to throw the small one better, virtually everybody. And some guys have hand sizes that make the regulation ball basically for them like throwing a middle school ball.
Yep.
When you get into cold weather games and wet ball situations and all that, especially, that starts to matter a lot.
Yep, absolutely. And in the combine, speaking of that, the combine, they measure everything, and Carolina will have a pro day on Monday. If you come to the Bowls lot, you can get your Inside Carolina footballs like Jason's got in his hand, a great addition to the swag that we kick out in the Bowls lot. But pro day, speaking of that, pro day is Monday the 24th in Chapel Hill. That'll be an interesting thing. We'll get that covered and bring that coverage to you to Inside Carolina. Jason, mark that down on your calendar. You need to come on and go. It's at 8:30.
It's going to be tough for me to make it. What time?
I think it's at 8:30 or it's early in the morning, which is good for me. We'll figure it out.
It's when I'm teaching.
You're teaching at the wrong school, but
yeah, well,
I understand you got to make a living.
If Carolina wants to hire me with the tenure track position, I'll be there tomorrow. Those of you out there who have any say in this, you know.
It's turned into an advertisement for footballs and a job search. Welcome to the Inside Carolina job fair. We are here, but seriously, now 6.5, 7 minutes into the show.
A lot of jobs on the line in camp right now.
Absolutely. And camp is going strong. There are 4 or 5 practices in. Obviously, spring break was last week, and the guys were able to get away and do a little college stuff or advance their educational careers or be college students. But, Jason, one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and we sort of talked about it last time we got together with Greg Barnes, is we've seen some evidence and some information that they've gone under center a little bit this year. And that is something different. Carolina obviously did not and has not gone under center a ton. And when you have quarterbacks this day and age, they're not really under center guys. And Bryce Baker, obviously the freshman, who I think is probably the best of the bunch, but time will tell. It's been a struggle and a struggle to adjust to that. How you've coached quarterbacks and you've coached a lot of football and you've played a lot of football. How tough is that to go from being purely a shotgun guy? I mean, we talked about it with Drake May last year going into the NFL and with the Patriots. How tough a transition is that for a quarterback to get that down? Not only learning a new offensive system and everything that comes with that, but learning the physical mechanics of getting under center.
Yeah, it's actually not that hard to go from under center to shotgun. That's the easy part. So the transition's not hard that direction, but going under center from the shotgun where you haven't taken those reps and you really haven't built those mechanics, that's actually a significant deal. That's harder to do. And the reason is that the general mechanics that you have to learn from under center are just dramatically different. When you're taking, and some of this is obvious, when you're taking a shotgun snap, you're square to the line of scrimmage, so you see differently already, right? Number one. Number two is your footwork is different. So even with a deeper drop from the shotgun, you're not having to really drive back with that first step. You're not having to get a lot of depth with that first and second step from under center because you're already back there. You're 5 yards deep when you catch it, 5.5 yards deep when you catch the snap. So it's just a matter of getting your feet down and timing it up. When you come out from under center, first of all, you've got to actually have your hands in place and make sure you don't fumble the football, which requires making sure that your timing on that and squeezing the football and all that is exactly right. And that's the first thing that's going to happen with guys that have not taken a lot of snaps under center. You're going to see the ball go on the ground. And that nothing will lose you a job faster than putting the ball in the ground. If you can't take a snap reliably, you can't play. And that part is something that does have to change. So first of all, just fundamentally making sure that you don't, the natural thing, the reason that guys tend to lose it is they'll come out from from under center as the snap is happening. They're expecting the snap, and they will come out a little bit too quick, and they won't have the full football in their hands as they're pulling away from center. And that's when you see the ball drop. The other is that sometimes the ball hit the hands, and because you're not seeing it the way that you see it, even though you're looking upfield with the shotgun snap, you're still seeing it with your eyes. With a snap from under center, you're not seeing it. Everything's by feel, and you just have to mechanically just be so reliable with this. So building that mechanic of just taking the snap and not coming out too quickly, making sure that everything is done to where you're not leaving the football on the ground. That part's the first part. The second part is the footwork getting out from under center so that you're getting proper depth, and you're doing so in the right amount of time. You're doing so in terms of ball handling and where you're supposed to be, so that you're not stepping, you're not getting your foot stepped on by an offensive guard or by your center. You're not running into one of your backs who's in pass pro, or, as you're dealing with handoff mechanics and all of that. You have to be exactly right with your footwork all the time. And if you're not practiced on that, it's going to be a factor. It just takes a little while to get the mechanics down. Now, this is why I think it's important. Whenever I've coached quarterbacks, I've actually coached them from under center first, even if we didn't take snaps from under center. It's one of those things where, to me, learning the fundamentals of getting out from under center, learning how to get back from the center and get your footwork right there, and then get some of the timing down in terms of the steps that you need to have from under center to be able to throw certain routes on time. If you can do that from under center, it actually, I've always thought, improves what you can do from the shotgun. It actually helps your feel. It helps you a little bit in those ways. And then it also makes you more flexible as a team formationally and some of that stuff. Even if you never run it otherwise, being able to go under center in short yardage, being able to take a snap and quarterback sneak it, that stuff matters. And I suspect if I had to guess, you're not going to see. This will be an interesting over under. Let's just pencil this one in for the preseason. Over under snaps from under center on the season. Percentage of snaps. I would put that over under at like 10%. And honestly,
on the season, on the season, 10% over under.
And if I had to guess right now, just guessing, because we've not seen a bunch. What we have seen, we've seen a little bit under center stuff, so we have seen enough to confirm it. I'm still guessing that when push comes to shove during the season, they're still under center less than 10%. But they want to be able to do it. Right?
You don't want to have to do it and have not repped it aplenty.
Exactly. You want your quarterbacks to develop the fundamentals that come from doing that. Develop some of the pocket feel that comes from doing that. Develop the ball handling that comes from that. Develop the timing on certain things that comes from that. And then transition. I suspect we'll see more pistol, which pistol is basically the benefits of being under center for the most part. Only you don't have the footwork of getting out on the first two steps. But again, I suspect you'll see that. I suspect you'll see a lot of shotgun. But, who knows? Given what they've got on the offensive line, given, the running back situation, they may decide that they want to do a little bit more of it. But my guess is this is more about building in the fundamentals that they want. Just like in the pros, you don't see teams go. How much was Tom Brady under center in his last 2 or 3 years in New England?
Not much, unless it was something down on the goal line or fourth and short. Not much at all. And
he's one of the best quarterback sneak guys ever. I mean, he could always find. There were times where he was getting 4, 5, 6 yards a pop on quarterback sneaks. because so much of that is about technique and about understanding where the bubble is and all that, and knowing where the defense is pinching. He always did a great job with that. But that's stuff that you can only do if you're really reliable on your fundamentals, and they're going to want to be able to do that. So, yeah, I think right now, a lot of this spring, a lot of what they're doing is geared towards getting guys fundamentals to where they think they need to be. And Bill is, if anything, he's more old school than me, which is going to mean he's going to favor starting from the basics.
Yeah, you definitely start, like you said, start from the basics, work off of that, but get it in everybody's system, and I mean their individual systems, and then it's you're able to do it when you need to do it, and not have to worry about it being a bad situation. We're talking with Jason Staples here on the Inside Carolina, sort of a special spring update here. Recording this on March 19th. You're probably watching it on March 20th or beyond. And shout out to the folks paying attention to us, and shout out to the sponsors. Jason, one thing, that goes with what you just mentioned is the offensive line. And that's an issue. They talk about wanting to build from the inside out. They've got a lot of transfers. We've heard some of the transfers have been better than others. And we a name that we talked about a lot last year that really didn't get a lot of playing time or whatever was Janai Norwood. And he's been a good option on the offensive line this year, but also the transfers, excuse me, and King and Boone have been guys that we've heard their names more than once. Just this aspect of Carolina, the offense is going to be as good as the offensive line, I think, for this team. It's not, you don't have an all-world quarterback back there that can make an offensive line look great. You don't have an all-world running back that can do the same. Your take here on why this is so important, and to hear names like Norwood and King and Boone being guys that are sort of standing out or stepping up.
Yeah, of those guys, the Norwood name coming out multiple times is probably the most important and most interesting, because he's a guy that actually has the athletic profile to potentially be a good left tackle, right? He's a guy that has good length, but it's the mobility. He moves really well. I mean, he could just as easily play defensive tackle. So if he's able to seize that left tackle spot, that gives them, that's really where the question mark is, right? You know what you got at one of the guards, where you had a guy you really liked last year. You know what you got at center. In King and Boone, you think you probably got your right side guys that are going to be able to play there, and you still got Trevion Green, right? So you got some players. That left tackle spot is the real question, and if Norwood's able to actually take that with his athleticism and all that, you feel really comfortable about it. Now, it is completely unsurprising that the two names that we're hearing the most about are King and Boone, right? I mean, that was the thing that those are the two guys that when I went through my scouting reports, it's like, these are plug and plays. Those two guys should start as plug and play starters. They're going to find a way on the field, most likely. It's just a matter of who's going to be on the outside, who's going to be on the inside. I think Boone's more of a tackle, King's more of a guard, but we'll see. We had some questions about some of the other guys in terms of whether they were ready to play right away. We talked about Miles. Excuse me. We talked some about Miles McVay from Alabama, and him being maybe the most physically talented of the bunch, but a guy that when we really evaluated him, we felt like the real question mark was work ethic, and did he have the nasty and the intangible stuff, the urgency, the intensity to be able to play. The question, and we talked about it on our video, is he going to be somebody that the light bulb really goes on being under Bill Belichick, or is he going to be closer to a defensive tackle who was on the roster, who was a 5-star guy last year? We talked about that. And so far, we haven't, let's just, this, we haven't heard his name as a guy that's ready to play. The talent's clear. But the good thing is, I think you got if Norwood's ready to go, I think you got 5 guys right there, probably 6, because you probably still include Trevion Green as a guy that can play. You got 6 guys that I think you feel comfortable with out the gate. So that's good. You'd like to build that up by 2 or 3 more bodies for sure. But all those guys are big and all of them can move. So that's a good place to start. And like you said, that's where this team's going to be built from, because they don't have a surefire playmaker at some of those other spots. Though if you can start mashing and getting yardage on first down just because you can lean on teams, that sure helps a quarterback feel comfortable. That opens a lot of the other stuff up.
Absolutely. It gives a lot of options there. And I think, I think one interesting aspect of all this is the coachability and the adaptability aspect of players. Clearly, what's going on in Chapel Hill is very, very different than the way it was under Mac Brown. It is a complete, I mean, I don't know if you can get further apart in being a way things are handled from a personable standpoint or however you want to play it. This is not a kumbaya, let's all hug it out staff from all accounts. Whereas Mac Brown and all that, he talked about that aspect of his program. And there's no right or wrong thing here, but this is very different. And so to be coachable, to be adaptable to different ways, that's been a challenge for players. It's been a challenge for everybody around the program, is to see a different way of doing things. We always talk about faith is something that you believe in that you haven't seen. Well, you're seeing that work itself out across the country, but also in Chapel Hill with players having that or not having that. And it'll be an interesting spring. But Jason, to your point, Boone and King have been names that we've consistently heard of being guys that are getting there and getting
and guys that are coachable, very
Exactly.
coachable, and guys that have stepped forward as eager to learn and to play at the level of intensity and so on that they need to play at.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
One of the things also, we've gotten feedback where some of these players, some of the players who are left over, some of the new players are absolutely thrilled with the shift in tenor and the way that things are run. I mean, there's no doubt about that. And then there's a few players who seem not to be maybe as on board with, maybe they miss the old way of doing things a little bit. And that's just the way that this is going to work. I mean, anytime you have a change in management, a change in ownership, it's going to be, there's going to be some folks who kind of wish things are the way that they used to be. And that seems to be the case in a few cases, in a few situations. It'll be interesting to see what happens. It'll be interesting to see what happens in terms of movement in and out after the spring. We've already seen they're bringing another guy in, right? Post spring, they just landed a defensive end prospect who's got some nice potential. Smith Vilbert from Penn State. I know you got excited after you saw his highlights.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, this guy makes plays all over the field all game long, and you're like, he played 19 and a half snaps a game. Just what did you – I saw a guy that could move. I saw a guy that could make game-changing plays. Granted, don't get caught up in highlight tapes. You need to watch the bad tape to really know what you're doing. But I saw a guy that can contribute on the defensive line perhaps if he plays like that, like he looked in those tapes. And that's certainly when you got to replace a guy like Koman Rucker and you're building from the inside out. Well, this is a defensive line, but he's on the edge. What did you see when you looked at that tape from your eyes? Because I saw somebody that could help this team for sure if he brings that and the other two things we talked about, coachability, adaptability, when he gets to Chapel Hill.
Well, one thing I think just in watching him and looking at his different reps, not just there, but if you watched him during games, on the whole, you are getting a try hard, right? He is a guy that the motor runs hot. Now, again, playing 20 snaps a game, your motor dang well better run hot. You ain't going to be tired. You shouldn't be tired, but you're getting a guy who is going to bring that part. To me, he's more of a run stopping, big defensive end type. And he very much fits the mold of what they want to have, and kind of a flexible guy that you can put him out there. And all of a sudden, and Penn State did this with him some. You can suddenly slide him into the 3 technique. You can slide him inside and have him do stuff in there. You can have him on the edge as more of a run-stopping defensive end. But he also had a little bit of juice in terms of getting after the passer. Now, he's a little bit heavier footed when it comes to open field stuff. But, I mean, what do you expect from 6'6", 280?
That's a large human being running around.
He's 6'6", 280, and he has the arm length and all that comes with that you would expect. So, he's kind of built like you'd hope there. There's actually some similarities to me between him and Jacoby Cowan. I think he's maybe a little bit he's a more polished, more advanced Jacoby Cowan. Cowan had been limited so early in his career so much by injury that he didn't develop until really late. But in terms of the kind of body that you're dealing with and the potential player that you're dealing with, he's somebody similar to that. But somebody who has a history of making more plays because he's played in bigger games and he's played a lot more football. So, you look at him at Penn State this last year. Penn State played in some meaningful football games. He had 339 snaps and, played in the college football playoff, played against Boise State in the first round of college football playoff, against Notre Dame in the second round. Finished his regular season in the conference championship against Oregon. Right? I mean, you're talking about a guy who's played against some of the best teams in college football and graded out well in a number of these, made some plays, forced a fumble against Oregon in a play where, he's in a one-on-one situation and got his arm in there. But I would not expect him to be an all ACC type guy. I think he's a replacement level to just above replacement level, big defensive end who gives you some juice as an inside rusher and inside player as well. The real appeal here is in the Belichick type system where you move guys around to find advantageous matchups. And maybe you put 3 defensive ends on the field at once. Maybe you put 4 defensive ends on the field at once. Maybe you put your nose tackle outside, your defensive end inside one play. You're moving guys around a lot like they do. This is the kind of player that you have a lot of flexibility with. And I think that helps him fit right away. And, he played 20 snaps a game at Penn State. That Penn State defensive line was a top 5 defensive line in the country.
And they had guys. You didn't have to have a guy playing 70 or 80 snaps. You could spread them out. Right.
That was, for my money, if you watch that Penn State team, that was, for my money, might have been a little higher than the top 5 defensive lines in the country. I mean, that was a really, really good defensive line. I mean, they got probably the number 1. He's a top 3 pick in the NFL draft, who was ahead of this guy at defensive end.
Yeah.
So
what's he going to be? Top? He's going to be what? Number 1 pick?
He might be the number 1
pick?
Overall pick. If I were picking in this draft, it would be him or Travis Hunter as the number 1 pick.
Yep.
So, and I'd probably take him because defensive end is just such a high value thing. But you can make a case for Travis Hunter because he's special.
Yeah.
And depending on what you need and all that. But he was in that rotation on defensive lines that cause problems. He should be able to arrive and be immediately rotational. He's going to play more than 20 snaps a game at North Carolina. He's going to play probably 35, 40 snaps a game at North Carolina. Then the question is just how much more efficient can you get him to be? I think, there's also actually the other guy that I would compare him to is just in terms of length and some of the strengths and weaknesses he brings. There's a lot of Evans in his game. Evans maybe a little bit more powerful through his hands and a little bit more just of a raw, like built in a lab kind of athlete. But Vilbert has a lot of nice similarities to Des Evans. And I'll tell you right now, this coaching staff would take Des Evans on this team. If they could have him for one more year, the Belichick coaching staff would take Des Evans in a heartbeat. And with Vilbert, they're getting a guy that's a lot like a Des Evans, actually probably as much like Evans, sort of a cross between Evans and Jacoby Cowan. So you're getting that kind of player. I think somebody that makes you better, somebody that is going to play probably 30 to 40 snaps a game, if not more, depending. I mean, you'd like him to play about 35, 40 and have enough guys to rotate where you're able to keep him fresh. But he's immediately in the mix. Definitely makes it.
Yeah, and he, defensive line's one of those places. I see it doesn't do it on mine. You got your emoji things popped up or something, but yeah, on the defensive line, where Carolina's got to find bodies there, and they've got to do. We've heard, UConn transfers have been a little dinged up and all that kind of thing, but you've got to have guys if they want to run what they want to run on defense. The defensive line's got to be stout there because they've added some skill and they've got some skill behind them, but the defensive line is where it starts and ends.
And there's a lot of concerns there. They need bodies.
Yeah,
and
they do.
That was a concern about Melcart from UConn coming in, right? That was my scouting report. Is
Melcart, Delaware, Price Yates, UConn.
Delaware, that's right. From UConn, from Price Yates from UConn, that's right. Yates from UConn. My scouting report on him was, well, last year he was okay. The year before he got hurt, that was a player. The question is, are they going to get the player post-injury or are they going to get the player who before he was injured? Right? Is he going to fully recover? And he hasn't fully recovered yet. So we don't know yet. But you need some insurance.
Absolutely. And you got to have a lot of them. And you got to bring them in, see who can play and see who can not, and shake it out when it comes to it. On to TCU, where you got to have those guys ready to go against TCU. Jason, anything else? I think the interesting things that I've heard and hearing is, they're having some physical practices. We've heard that post spring break practices have been tough, and they've had some grueling days out there. It kind of reminds me
that spring break. Get that out of the system.
Really. I mean, I'd hate to have to go into practice like that after some of the spring breaks I went to, but it feels like almost like some weed out type practices. It reminds me of like Chemistry 101, the weed out chemistry. You want to be a doctor? Take this class first. You can't handle this class, you might as well quit. And that feels like that's what it is some. But anything else on your mind here, what we've talked about, what you've heard about from spring? I think this is a good update. But I think folks need to realize there's those things I talked about, is the adaptability and the coachability. And just because you transferred in last month or whatever we're in March, so in December and January, doesn't mean that door doesn't swing open the other way if it's not working out, because I don't think this coaching staff's going to have time to deal with folks that aren't completely bought in, folks that aren't completely on board with what they're trying to do. And granted, it's new, but it's new for a reason, because the old way wasn't getting it done. But I'll let you close it out, Jason.
Yeah, one or two of these transfers that they just brought in might well be onto somebody else and not onto TCU after the spring. If they're not coachable, if they're not what they want, then Belichick will be very clear with them about that. And time to move on. This is a very fish or cut bait type program at this point. And
yep.
That is very different. They're not coaching to try to avoid guys transferring.
Absolutely.
They're going to try
before.
Yeah. If you don't want to do things our way, well, let me know. We'll go ahead and prep the papers for you. Yeah. Because that's just the way that they think that things need to be done. And I expect that there will be some attrition, but ultimately you hope that enough A-type players actually want in who want to meet that standard. And that word starts getting around of like, yeah, you're going to actually get developed. You're going to be good if you meet that standard. That's what you hope. Now, the final thing, we talked a little bit about quarterbacks, but I know some of the intel right now is that Brown is picking certain things up a little bit faster. but the quarterbacks in general have been up and down, mostly pretty average. Guys, for those of you who have heard this, and I know it's more than just us that are hearing things on this front. That's not a surprise. It's an entirely new offense. You have a very, very talented true freshman in his first semester on campus. The first times that he's ever taking snaps from under center, learning a much more sophisticated type offense than what he's played in before. You'd expect, first of all, if I was going to handicap it going in, and this is what we talked about again before the spring, you'd expect Brown to come in a little bit ahead because he's been in college. He's had the opportunity to go through this. He's physically more developed. He's learned multiple offenses. It's sort of like once you've learned 2 languages, it's easier to learn the third. This is where they are. Now, the guy that's more talented, the other thing that we keep hearing is, in terms of talent, Baker's the most talented guy. It sticks out. Well, that's not surprising either. So I think one of the most important things right now is understanding that this spring is a spring that calls for patience as they're, pulling things. They're stripping down the walls down to the studs before they put new drywall up and all that. It's going to require some patience. It's going to require understanding of exactly what they're trying to aim for. And then they're also trying to figure out, what do we really need to throw some money at in the transfer portal to be able to have a chance to compete after we figure out what gaps are there after the spring. And, who's going to be in the portal for that. I continue to think that this first season is also going to be, just in general, a season that's going to require some patience. But they're bringing in some pieces that year 2, year 3 have a chance to make some waves if they can stack some additional talent with that. So it's a time for patience, but there's a lot of interesting intel, and they're just trying to flip the culture and also find out what they have on this roster. And so far, it's a nice incomplete.
Absolutely. It was, you threw it away and you didn't take a sack. It's an incomplete pass to start with. Or as Jason Staples, who teaches folks stuff, you just didn't. I'm not ready to give you a final grade yet. It's going to take a while.
Yeah.
It's going to be.
Grades don't start getting assessed until TCU.
Yeah, absolutely. That'll do it for Inside Carolina. Shout out to Johnny T-Shirt. I mentioned them. Go see them on Franklin Street. I mentioned JohnnyT-shirt.com. Go see them there. 10% off your premium or your order if you're a premium subscriber. And email matt@congruity.com for your small to mid-sized business assessment. And you want that ball? Go to Big Game USA and buy that ball with the link in the description. And you want the ball Jason had earlier? Meet us in the Bowls lot this fall and check that out. You can get some. Anyway, that'll do it for Inside Carolina. I think, I didn't make him cough, folks. If you're watching the video, Jason is alive and well. It's allergy season.
Barely.
But that'll do it for Inside Carolina special podcast. Shout out to everybody involved in the process. Trust the process. The process is always got to be trusted. We'll be doing that here at Inside Carolina. Hope you do it as well. That's Jason Staples. I'm Tommy Ashley. Congruity, Johnny T-Shirt, and Big Game USA. Everybody, appreciate you listening. Everybody stay safe.